Okay, we'll get started. We left off with a question yesterday. The Rebbe concludes in the Mamar that just like from Avraham Avinu to Moshe Rabbeinu was 7 generations, in the same way, from the Alter Rebbe to us is also 7 generations. That we explained, how do you define a generation? The answer is, it goes by the Nasi. So the Alter Rebbe was the first Nasi, and Kol Hashvin Chavivin is our generation, the Rebbe. Of course, the Rebbe doesn't speak about himself, so the Rebbe is always referring to the generation, but it's really the Nasi that defines the generation. Then the Rebbe goes on to say that just like with the first set of 7 generations, the Shekhinah was brought down from heaven to heaven to heaven to heaven, and eventually the 7th generation was brought down to earth, same as now, that the Shekhinah is brought down by all the Rabbeim from heaven to heaven to heaven, and in our generation, we're going to bring it down to earth. So the question is, but it was already done. So what happened? Does it mean that because of our various it went back up? It's no longer down here on earth. But that's not the truth, because when the Torah was given, it came down to earth. And the Torah mitzvahs are eternal, and everything remained the same. So it means right now the Shekhinah is down on earth. There is such things where it says that there's a certain light of Hashem that was in this world, and then through the Eitz Hadas it left, and then through the Matan Torah it came back, and then when the Yidden worshipped the Egel Azov, it went away. But that's all, certain aspects of it. But in general, the Shekhinah is down here, and that's why when we learn Torah, do mitzvahs, we bring godliness down to this lowest physical world. So what does it mean that the Alter Rebbe started to bring the Shekhinah down from the 7th heaven to the 1st? 7th to the 6th, and so on. So the answer, the Pashtus, is that when we talk about Mashiach, when we say Mashiach is going to come, when he's going to come, the deepest secrets of the Torah will be revealed. All the Yidden will be back in Eretz Yisrael. We'll have the 3rd Beis HaMikdash. There'll be Tchias HaMesim, all these amazing things. Even though there's a long list of all the amazing things, we can make a big list. This whole list is a result of one major thing that's going to happen. What is it? Any guess? There's one major thing that's going to happen, and that's going to be the source of all the other changes. Of course, Mashiach. But what's going to happen when Mashiach comes? That's going to be the one thing, the one change that's going to make all the other changes. Hashem will be revealed. But we just said Hashem was already revealed when the Torah was given.
Now he's not so revealed. I mean, he's here, but he's not so revealed.
So obviously when Mashiach comes, Hashem will be revealed. It's got to be different than what happened before, because the results are different.
Yeah, the revelation will be...
It's going to be different. So what way will it be different? There's 2 ways you can explain the difference. One way is that we'll be able to see more of what's here, and then we didn't see as much. But it's much deeper than that. It's not only about us. It means the level of godliness that's revealed in the world now, even after the Torah was given, is not the same that's going to be revealed when Mashiach comes. And because it's a higher level of godliness, therefore there will be no concealments, there will be no limitations, there will be no more all those negative things that stand in the way. So that means the one single thing that's going to happen when Mashiach comes, we use the term, the light of Mashiach will be shining. The light of Geula will be shining. Sometimes we learn in Chassidus, we say the light of the Olam HaTohu will be shining in this world. all of this means, in simple words, it'll be, without even knowing differences of levels, it means there'll be a level of godliness that'll be shining in this world that was never yet revealed before. And because there's a new level of godliness that's unlimited, that's Ein Sof, therefore we'll have this world that's going to be when Mashiach comes. Now, Melech HaMashiach will be the person who's going to reveal that light. And through, found it?
In Mrs. Spritzer's cabinet.
Oh, okay. Thank you. He's going to reveal that light, and that's going to make the changes. So, of course, that's what all the Mamar and Chassidus talk about. What's the difference between this light, the other light? But just to say at least one word, so we know that Or Ein Sof, which is higher than Atzilus, that's the light in Keser. In Keser, there are various levels itself. The general two levels are, we learned in the Mamar, pleasure and willpower. Hashem's pleasure, Hashem's willpower. So the deepest thing is Hashem's pleasure. In the language of Chassidus, it's called Atik. Atik. The willpower is called Arich, and the pleasure is called Atik in the Kabbalistic language. So the Rebbe brings down that all the light of Hashem that was revealed since the beginning of creation, everything with all its qualities and advantages, they all come from the external part of Atik. When Mashiach comes, what's going to be revealed is the Pnimius, the inner dimension of Atik, which is infinite more than anything we've ever known before. Okay, so without going into the details, because that's something which you have to learn a lot about, but once we understand that when Mashiach comes, there'll be a new light that's going to be revealed in this world. So now, what we understand is that when the Baal Shem Tov began to reveal Chassidus, and especially when the Alter Rebbe began to reveal a new path in Chassidus, that's when that light that's going to be revealed when Mashiach comes started to be revealed. But first it was revealed in the seventh heaven. The Mittel Rebbe brought it down to the sixth heaven. Tzemach Tzedek's generation, it was brought down to the fifth heaven. And that's what the Rebbe is saying, that this light of Mashiach, which already began to descend a few generations ago, is descending and descending. And now in our generation is the time that this light will come down to earth, and then we'll see all these changes in this physical world. Yeah.
What about the dolphins?
They started the process. Apparently, when they started the process, it wasn't yet fully revealed, even in the seventh heaven. It was still more in a higher place. And the Alter Rebbe generation, that's the way I understand from the Mamar, not that I know the heavens, but when the Alter Rebbe began to reveal Chassidus Chabad, it was a new form of revealing Chassidus, which means a new form of revealing godliness. And that's apparently when it started to be revealed in the seventh heaven. And that's what the Alter Rebbe accomplished in his avodah, in his years of leadership. Then the Mittel Rebbe, in his years of leadership, accomplished a new thing, that this level of godliness that will be revealed when Mashiach comes was now revealed in the sixth heaven. And the Frierdiker Rebbe revealed it in the first heaven. And the Rebbe in this generation is revealing it down to earth. The Chassidim always say that the Rebbe's name has three words to it. The first is a mem, first name. The second name is again a mem. And the third name, which is the family name, Schneerson, is a shin. So what does it spell? Mem, mem, shin. Mamish. You must have heard the word before, mamish. So what does mamish mean? Mamish means actual. In fact, mamish comes from the word mamash, you can touch it. It's so concrete that you can touch it. So that's, in a sense, what's happening in our generation, that this light of Mashiach has to come down to the level that we can see the Beis Hamikdash with our eyes, and we'll be into the physical Eretz Yisrael, and physically there won't be any wars, and physically all these things will be down to the lowest of levels. So that's what the Rebbe is saying, that we have the merit to be in the seventh generation. This is our mission, and as long as this doesn't happen, we haven't fulfilled and accomplished our mission. And therefore, knowing this, this gives sort of light and perspective to all the miftzayim and all the things throughout the years of the Rebbe's siches, what it's all going in one direction. That's the thread behind everything, bringing Mashiach down to earth. Okay, so now we're going to go to towards the end of the Mamar. So if I can ask someone to do me this favor and pass this around, Maya. See you, at the end of the Mamar. The previous Rebbe explains, I just want to, by the way, mention that the Friedrich Rebbe used to speak about the Rebbe Rashab, also say that he's the seventh. But he was the seventh from the Baal Shem Tov. And that's why there are times where the Rebbe refers to our generation as the ninth. And they're both true. It's the ninth from the Baal Shem Tov and the seventh from the Alter Rebbe, which means from whatever the Baal Shem Tov began, it's 9 generations. What the Alter Rebbe began, it's the seventh stage, the 7th generation. In fact, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but every book of Chassidus from in Chabad, like any other book, there's a cover page in the front. But in Chabad, it has a little bit more meaning than the regular cover page. Let me see if we have something on the table here. Let me see if there's a Tanya on the table. Is there a Tanya in the house? I know that would have it. Okay. Next time you pick up a sefer, and you look over here in the front. So this one doesn't have it, but it'll say on top that this is the 7th chamber. Is the word heichel, which means a chamber, or 6th chamber, or 5th chamber, and the Rebbe's svarim are the 9th, because there's 9th in the Baal Shem Tov. And in fact, every Rebbe has a different design. All the Maimarim or Sichos of the Friedrich Rebbe have one design. The Rebbe Rashab have another design. The Mitzvah Rebbe have a third design. When it came to the Rebbe's forum, the Friedrich Rebbe said they should make it the same as the Rebbe Rashab's design, which is interesting because they do have this one thing in common, that they're both the 7th. But the Rebbe is the 7th from the Alter Rebbe, and the Rebbe Rashab is the 7th from Baal Shem Tov. At the end of the Mamar, he explained, so we're on page 65, sorry, for those that are listening in, page 65, being that Hashem wanted that the Shekhinah should primarily be down here, where was it? In this world itself, where was it primarily? So from all the worlds, it was primarily in this world. In this world itself, where is it primarily? Where is it revealed? The Beis HaMikdash. And he explained that this is the reason why the Mishkan was built from wood. That's called Atzei Shittim, because the word Shittim means that this wood has a certain property in it. Was the purpose of the Beis HaMikdash is to transform the shtus of Klippa, and the koch and nefesh habahamis, that passion that the animal soul has, which is usually shtus de Klippa, because it's really not fulfilling the purpose that you were created for, and for a human being should be involved in things that are so much more meaningful, but it's shtus. But you transform that into shtus de kedusha. Page 66. I'm Razal, and like our sages have taught us, Ahani le'lushtusi the Saba, where he said that the reason why this tzaddik achieved such greatness, the greatness that by his funeral there was a pillar of fire that descended from heaven, and this pillar of fire separated this tzaddik from everybody else. Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yitzchak, he said the reason why he merited such greatness was because he acted in this as if silly way at a wedding by juggling the branches of Hadassim. And what does that mean? Avodah bittul shalamayim b'tamadas, not chas v'shalom silly. It means his avodah was in a way that it transcended logic, and even logic of kedusha didn't understand it and couldn't accept it. And that's why the other sages said, wow, we're embarrassed of you. You're an embarrassment to us. How could you act this way? Because Seichel of Torah didn't agree that a person should go this far to make Chassan and Kala happy. But because he was serving Hashem from a level of his neshama that was beyond logic, he did it even in a way that even transcended the principles of logic. All those things that the previous Rebbe demanded of us, and the same with all the Rabbeim, they observed this themselves, and then they asked us that we should do it as well, but they did it themselves. Page 67. This is similar to what our sages say. This is a pasuk in Tehillim. We say it in davening every day, and the words read in a very simple way. God gives over His word to Yaakov, meaning to the Jewish people, His chukim, His mishpatim to Yisrael. So our sages say, what does it mean Hashem gives His chukim, His laws? These are laws for us, not for Him. So the simple meaning is, yeah, but He's the one who created these laws. No, the Gemara says it's deeper than that. The Gemara says there's a king that he gives commandments to other people to do things, but he himself doesn't do it. I'm the king. I can tell you what to do, but I don't have to bother doing it. But the Eibishter, whatever he tells us to do, he himself does it as well. And therefore, this is a Gemara, Mamar Chazal, that every single kid in Lubavitch knows it. Why? Because in the Mamar that the boys say when they become bar mitzvah, they say this statement, because it concludes that just like we put on film, Hashem puts on film. And then the Gemara talks about what does it say in Hashem's film. In our film it says Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim. What does it say in Hashem's film? That's Hashem has a film on the hand and Hashem has a film on the head, all in a metaphoric way. So what does it say here? That Hashem gives us commandments, but He Himself follows those commandments in a spiritual sense. He keeps Shabbos, he eats matzah, whatever that means spiritually. The same is with our Rabbeim. Whatever is they demanded of their followers, and all those that have any connection to them, they themselves did it. Why is it so important that they did it? So he says the reason why they revealed to us that they did it. Let's turn to page 68. The reason is that it should be easy for us to observe it. Just yesterday, we mentioned in class about Avraham Avinu's Mesirus Nefesh. Remember, we raised the question, and we asked, how come we make such a commotion about Avraham Avinu's Mesirus Nefesh, that he was ready to give up his life and bring Yitzhak to the Akedah, when so many thousands and hundreds of thousands or millions of Jews not only were ready, they actually gave up their lives. And not only gave up their own lives, they gave up the lives of their children, Rahman al-Islam. And they weren't prophets and so on and so forth. And what was the answer? The answer was he was the first. So what if he's the first? So we explained that spiritually, when someone does something the first time, they open a new door, a new gate, Once the new door, the new gate is open, then it's easy for everyone else to follow. I might be repeating myself from a class we gave in the beginning of the year, but it's relevant to this, so I'm going to repeat it again. And that is, this is the basis for a famous story with the Beis Yosef, Rabbi Yosef Cairo, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, who is such a great tzaddik that the one who composed the Shulchan Aruch, which all Jews live by this. He was once struggling to understand something in Gemara, and struggling to understand it for a few days. And finally, after I think the third day, after working on this constantly, he finally came to understand the meaning of the Gemara. And then he overheard in shul someone learning with other people, one of the ordinary scholars in the room, and somebody in that group asked the question, or he himself asked the question. And that was the question he was struggling with for days. And then he gives an answer. And he was shocked. I struggled with this for days. And this person, in a second, someone asked the question, he has the answer. And of course, what was his conclusion? There must be something wrong with me. There must be something spiritually blocking me that I couldn't understand something in Gemara that a person who was so much more simpler than me was able to get it. It was very broken. And he went to the Arizal. They lived in the same city in Tzfas. And he said to the Arizal, like, what does this mean? Why? Where am I going wrong? What is blocking me that I couldn't get it? The Arizal said, no, you're making a mistake. There's nothing blocking you. So how could it be that it took you days and this guy figured it out right away? The answer is, this is a thought of Torah that never yet was revealed in the world before. So you were the first one to reveal it. And once you revealed it, now it's accessible to everybody. Once it's accessible to everybody, this person could think for 1 minute and he has the answer right away. It's the same idea. In other words, once you open the gate, once you open the door, and like imagine a wall that's blocking and nobody can break the wall. And then one person who is extremely strong or talented figures a way to make an opening in the door. And now everybody just walks right through without any effort. Not because they're better than me, it's because of what I did. So this principle applies to everything and anything spiritually. That the first person that does it, by them doing it, they open the door, it's treading a path, and now everybody else could easily follow that path. So when it says that Hashem does the mitzvah, and then he gives a commandment for the same reason, by Hashem doing the mitzvah in his spiritual way, that opens the door that we can do the mitzvah down here. So it says that tzaddikim, they are compared to their creator, and therefore tzaddikim do the same thing. When they demand of us to do something, they first do it themselves. And by them doing it themselves, they're opening the door, they're opening the path, they're opening the gate. And now we can be expected to do it without the difficulty because they already broke whatever was blocking. So therefore, they reveal to us personal things about themselves, what they did. And the reason why they revealed it was so that now that we know about it, it's going to be easier for us to follow that path. And then the Rebbe gives the example of Ahavas Yisrael, and it tells a story with each one of the Rabbeim of how they paved the way in Ahavas Yisrael. And we see here, this was like I said, the mission statement for all the years of leadership in the future. This year it's the 70th year. For the next 70 years, that our Avodah more than anything else is Ahavas Yisrael. To reach out to other Yidden, help everybody, begashmis, help other people, baruchnias, and that's going to prepare the word for Mashiach. Sheyesh b'zeh kama v'kama sipurim. There are many stories, mikol echad v'echad manasim, from each one of the Rabbeim in terms of understanding and seeing how they went out of their way for Ahavas Yisrael. The dogma, one example is the Alter Rebbe. The Rebbe goes in the order of the generations. He interrupted in the middle of his prayers, and it was the night of Kol Nidrei. And he went and he chopped wood, and he cooked a soup, and he fed this woman who had just given birth. Nobody was home. So basically, this was a story of a woman that gave birth, and actually, so she's weaker. Apparently, the family, the husband, the children, no one was aware that she is so weak. They went to shul, it's Yom Kippur, but the Alter Rebbe knew with Ruach HaKodesh, she knew that this woman is not feeling well, and if nobody takes care of her, God forbid, who knows what would happen. So Alter Rebbe took off his talis and left the shul, and he went to the house, but to give her food, there's no food there. So you have to chop wood. Chopping wood is not allowed to be done on Yom Kippur. Wood's not going to help you. You have to make a fire. So you have to light a fire. It's another thing you're not allowed to do on Yom Kippur. Then you go cook a soup. It's another thing you're not allowed to do on Yom Kippur. The Alter Rebbe did all these things and then fed this woman that she should be able to grab. It looks like it says fed the woman, which means she was even too weak to eat herself. The Alter Rebbe gave her and revived her that way. So, in a sense, how did the Alter Rebbe know that she was this way, Ruach HaKodesh? But the Rebbe also explains in other places that the tzaddik, the nasi, is like the head to the whole body. The word Rebbe actually stands for 3 words: Rosh B'nai Yisrael, the head of all the Yidden. The brain is the part of the body that feels whatever's going on in the rest of the body, which means if I hurt myself, even if I hurt my toe, the pain is in the toe, but where does it register? In the brain. In fact, the brain, that's why there's a pasuk, it says, Yosef Machev, Yosef Das, Yosef Machev. The more brains, the more pains, which basically means the smarter a person is, the more they feel pain. But physically, I'm talking about biologically, where does pain register in the brain? If God forbid, there's something wrong with the connection between the brain and the other organs of the body, the person doesn't feel the pain. So the Nasi feels the pain of every Yid. I once heard there was a Rebbe who was called Rabbi Sorel of Ruzhin. He was a grandson of the Mazricha Magid, and he was a Rebbe of a different group in the same times as the Tzemach Tzedek. So apparently somebody once said to him, "You're a Rebbe," made some comments, said, "I don't know about the title, but one thing I can tell you that if a Jew if his toenail is hurting, I feel his pain." So that's the definition. So the Rebbe felt that this woman has this pain. I just read a story, which I never saw before, that this person got off the airplane and he gets into a taxi, and the taxi driver says, "Oh, you look like you're a chassid." I don't know if this was here or in Israel, because the story is written in Hebrew. It says, "It looks like you're from Chabad. I'll tell you a story with your Rebbe that happened with my father." And he said, "My father lived in Crown Heights, and he had a bakery on Kingston and Union. This is before my times, because I don't even remember that bakery. This is, I think he says it was 1957. I didn't live in Crown Heights in those days. And they had a bakery, but the bakery, he bought it from someone else. Someone else had the bakery before, and then they decided to sell the bakery. He said, my father bought it for them for $20,000. In 1957, $20,000 was a lot of money. Anyway, they did the sale and everything is fine. A week later, this person comes to my father and says, I really should get another $5,000. Like, I must have figured out I didn't take enough money for the business. I said, what do you mean? We already did the sale, we wrote the contracts, we arranged everything. You can't come back later and say you want more $5,000. He says, yeah, but I want $5,000 more. And he didn't give it to him because it didn't make any sense. And then he threatened him, you're going to see, you'll have trouble if you don't give me the $5,000. After the first few weeks, he noticed that a lot of people aren't coming into the stores. There used to be a lot of traffic. And he discovers that there's talk about his store, that the milk is chalav akum, and the food doesn't have a good hechsher, and like there's something wrong with the kashrus there, he shouldn't go in. And he had no doubt who was the one that spread this rumor, because everything was in order. And the business that he had were from the non-Jews who lived there, because the Jews were stopping to come in. But apparently it wasn't enough, and he felt that everything's going to fall apart. He said one day This young man walks in from the Chassidim, and he asks for cake, he asks for cookies, he asks for a lot of different things. Fills up a bag, and he's thinking in his head, should I tell him? If you're going to hear rumors, please don't pay attention. It's just rumors. Everything is in order. Maybe I shouldn't tell him. But he decided not to say anything. After he gives him the bag, he says, don't you have a bag with your name on it from the company, the bakery? One dafka bag that has my name on it? Okay. So what was the name? His name was, I don't remember, but it was on the bag itself. He gave him the bag with the name. Montreal, they're from the same name as a family in Montreal. What's the name? The jewelry business. What's their name? Very wealthy. What? Gnevish. His name was Gnevish. I remember, I couldn't remember the name. Gnevish. But it has, I don't think it's related to that Gnevish, but that was his name. It was called Gnevish Bakery. So he dafka wanted a bag with that name. Anyway, he said that Shabbos, the Rebbe had a farbrengen. And by the farbrengen, they bring a bag. And the bag has the word Gnevish on it. And they take out of the bag cakes and cookies and whatever for the farbrengen. And of course, after that Shabbos, he said, all the Chassidim started to buy in his bakery. The Rebbe uses this bakery, so we're going to use the bakery. And everything turned around. He never wrote to the Rebbe, never asked the Rebbe. But the Rebbe understood his pain, felt his pain, and he took care of it. So the Alter Rebbe went himself. Now, the reason why the Rebbe is saying this, couldn't the Alter Rebbe ask one of the Chassidim, say, excuse me, go to this house, there's someone there that's very, life is in danger, go there quickly and do all these things. No, the Alter Rebbe went and did it himself. So for some people, Mesiras Nefesh is that they have to give away a lot of money. For some people, Mesiras Nefesh is they have to sleep a little bit or less. Some people, Mesiras Nefesh is they can't go on their vacation. Some people, Mesiras Nefesh is they can't go 5 times a year on vacation, only 4 times. But the Alter Rebbe, Mesiras Nefesh was, he gave up his Yom Kippur. The Rebbe once spoke about this. And Alter Rebbe's on Yom Kippur was in the highest level of Dveikus in Hashem, Mili b'Shamayim, V'imchalei chafatzti, like it says. The Alter Rebbe would say, I don't want your Gan Eden Elyon, Gan Eden Tach, Hashem, I just want you alone, the highest level, and he had to tear himself away from that connection and do what? Do things that you do on Yom Kippur that you're not even allowed to do normally. That's obviously so. Similar story with the Mittel Rebbe, Shenichnas Elav Echad Yichidus, someone went into Yichidus. And Yichidus was a time where you would go in and ask the Rebbe for a path in spiritual service, ask the Rebbe how to correct things that I did wrong. And this chassid, young man, he lamented, he complained about certain spiritual things that needed tikkun, needed to be corrected. What did the Alter Rebbe, the Mittel Rebbe do? Gila Azroi, apparently he rolled up his sleeves and he showed him his arm and he said to him, look at this, skin clings to my bones, which means as if to say, I'm not sure exactly what it means physically, but that means the skin was sort of peeled, like there was some sort of a condition, a health condition there. And he said, this is from your Averis. In other words, what you did is actually affecting me in my physical health. And then, of course, he gave him a path how to do tshuva. So the Rebbe says, it's understood, haflaws v'reimus milas kvedush adam ritzoi b'chlal. We understand the amazing, lofty, spiritual level of the Mittel Rebbe in general. And by any standards, how much more so, how you would compare the level of the Mittel Rebbe to a person that came in and saying that he committed certain sins which he needed to do tshuva for. Nevertheless, the spiritual bond between the Mittel Rebbe and this chassid was so deep to the point that his not doing things right had a physical effect on the health of the Frierdiker Rebbe, that it physically affected the skin of his body. In other words, one would look at the story and say, wow, this guy did a terrible thing. The Rebbe looks at the story and says, wow, look at the Avos Yisrael of the Mittel Rebbe. Here's a person that's on such a low level, to the point that he needs to have the tshuva, and yet the Mittel Rebbe is so connected to him that it affects him physically. So we see from this that in general, the Rebbe is never upset at a person because they did something wrong. He's upset at the thing that was done wrong. For the person, the Rebbe has unconditional love, and that's what we see here by the Mittel Rebbe. Then the story with the Tzemach Tzedek Shahol Chesed. He once went before davening to go find money to lend somebody. Who was the somebody? A simple person, and he needed it for his livelihood. Here, the Rebbe doesn't elaborate on the story, but in another place, the Rebbe elaborates on the story that when the Alter Rebbe was nostalgic, the Tzemach Tzedek saw him every day after his passing. And he would ask him questions. The Alter Rebbe gave him answers. And the Alter Rebbe told him what to do and where to go. And there was conversation and communication just like during the lifetime. One time, it stopped. Tzemach Tzedek didn't see the Alter Rebbe anymore. And he did whatever he knew to do as the Tzemach Tzedek, and he still couldn't come to speak to the Alter Rebbe. And of course, he was very pained by that. He tried everything, and nothing worked. One day, he was getting ready to daven, and a man who was a butcher tells the Tzemach Tzedek, today's a market day, so I need to buy merchandise. In his case, it was buying a cow, a calf, and I would buy it, and then I can sell it in the market. But I need money to buy it so I can sell it. Could you lend me some money? Apparently, Tzemach Tzedek wasn't the Rebbe at the time, but he had money that he lent people. So Tzemach Tzedek, sure, come to me right after davening, I'll give it to you. So then the Tzemach Tzedek is getting ready for davening. Then he said to himself, wait a second, he told me that today's a market day, and he needs this money to buy something to sell in the market. So I'm telling him to come after davening. That's going to be a few hours later. He needs it now. So he put the thalas down. He went home, got the money. Then he went searching for this person, and he gave him the loan. Then he went back to davening. He put the thalas on his shoulders, went over to the sink to wash his hands. And as he walked over to the sink, the Alter Rebbe appeared to him. And the Alter Rebbe gave him all the answers to all his questions, and everything went back to the way it used to be. In the schus of again, the same thing. We're not talking about ordinary people. We're talking someone like the Tzemach Tzedek, that davening to him, this was the essence of his life. And yet, he went, in order to give a person the loan a few hours earlier, he stopped what he was doing, which to him was connected to his whole essence, and he gave it to him. Then the third story is with the Rebbe Marash, Shepam Nosa B'yichud Mekurort LeParish. He traveled, because of his health, from a healing spa. He's traveled from there to Paris, in France. And over there, he met a young person. And he told him, young man, forbidden wine stuffs the mind and the heart. Become a Jew, become a practicing Jew. This person went back. He didn't rest until he went back to the Rebbe Marash, and he became about tshuva. And then eventually, he became the head of a big, extended family of people that serve Hashem. There's another place the Rebbe elaborated on the story in more detail. How the Rebbe Marash took two chassidim with him, and he said, "We're going to Paris." When he came to Paris, he chose the hotel that was the most expensive hotel in all of Paris. This was the hotel where if people of royalty came, that's where they stayed. Noblemen, that's where they stayed. And he went to that hotel. And the biggest shock to them was when he came to the hotel, he said, I want to be on the floor where you have the casino. The gambling. He went to that floor. And then they met there with the two chassidim and the Rebbe Marash. And he walked in as if he knew the place, walked over to a table as if he knew the person who normally sits there. And he said these words to him. On the table, there was cards, there were gambling, and there was, I guess, wine. And he said to him, younger man, non-kosher wine clogs the mind and the heart. Zayid. And the Chassidim said they never saw the Rebbe Marash so emotional. After this, when he walked out, he was very emotional. He's always very calm and collected. In those days, there was no elevator. So how did somebody go up and down the stairs if they didn't want to walk or they couldn't walk because it was hard for them? You would sit down on a chair, and people from the hotel would carry you down and carry you up. So the Rebbe Marash sat down on the chair to calm down. And immediately two people said, so where are we going? Which floor? And he said, pardon, I mistake, I'm on this floor. Because he asked for the floor where the casino is. And then later the person came looking for the Rebbe Marash, And he walked out of his room. A few hours later, his face was red, his eyes were red from crying, and it became about Shuvah. So the Rebbe goes on how for the Rebbe Marash, how much he had to extend himself to go there, spend hours, and bring this person back to Tshuva. So let's just finish the Rebbe Marash. It is well known that time was extremely precious by the Rebbe Marash to the extent Shagam Amir Sachsidis, even when he said Maimorim, he said them brief because every second was precious and he had to go on to do the next thing. In fact, there were times that 8 o'clock in the morning, he already finished davening because there was so much and he needed the time. Nevertheless, he traveled such a distant, far away place, and he was there for a period of time. And the whole purpose was for this one person. Later, the Rebbe Marash said that this neshama, it's 300 years since such a pure neshama was here in this world. Okay, to be continued. We'll continue tomorrow with Hashem.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye.